Hello, 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 hello. Ken? Ken? Okay, welcome everyone. Brochim Habayim. The Rav will arrive within a few minutes. First of all, hopefully everyone had wonderful Chagim. Still Chodesh Tishrei. This week is Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan. So as always, we'll fill in a little bit with some Torah until the Rav comes. So this week we're going to have a new Chodesh, and we have two traditions what to call this month. The month is Cheshvan, but some people call it Mar Cheshvan, and some people call it Ram Cheshvan. Ram is the same letters as Mar, just reversed. Why? Mar means bitter. The bitter month of Cheshvan. Why would it be called bitter? As I say, because there are no holidays in this month, especially after all the holidays of Tishrei. Relatively, this is a bitter month, because there's no holidays. And why would we call it Ram Cheshvan? Because there's a tradition in the future, the third temple will be built in Cheshvan. Okay, that's the simple understanding. But there's a beautiful remez here. Whether we call it Ram or whether we call it Mar, both of them are Gematria Amalek. 240, Amalek. And we know from the Baal Shem Tov that Amalek in Gematria equals Safek. So what's the remez here? The remez here is this month can either be Mar or Ram. Ram means elevated. It could be either a bitter month or an elevated month, depending on the following. After all of the prayers of Tishrei, all of the promises that we made, all the New Year's resolutions, question is, there's a suffix. Are we going to fulfill them or aren't we? After all that davening, are we actually going to do what we said? This is the month. The coming month is like, this is the test. Was it all just kind of in our heads? Or are we going to makayem it? So if we're not able to, then in a sense it's Mar Cheshvan. But if we're able to put into practice all the changes that we wanted for the new year, then it becomes Ram Cheshvan. It becomes elevated. So that's one idea. Another very, very beautiful idea from the Rav is that there are three different Aramaic translations. There's Onkelos, there's the Targum Yonatan, and there's the Targum Yerushalmi. So we see that in the Targum Onkelos, but in Targum Yonatan, on the word Bereshit, both of them translate it according to the simple understanding, in the beginning. Onkelos is Bakadmin, in the beginning. But the Targum Yerushalayim says B'chachma, with wisdom, God created heavens and the earth, which is not really the pshat of Bereshit, unless we connect it to Reshit Chachma Yirat Hashem. The beginning of Chachma is the Yira of Hashem. So first of all, in the word Bereshit, you have the word Yira. Reshit Chachma Yirat Hashem. It's Yira Shabbat. The 6 letters of Bereshit permute to Yira Shabbat. So this is actually what we say every week in Lecha Dodi. Sof Maaseh b'machshava techila. The Sof Maaseh is, after 6 days of creation comes Shabbat. So what's the machshava techila? Is in the word Bereshit is Yira Shabbat. Shabbat is already present in the word Bereshit. And of course there's 6 letters in Bereshit, which are the 6 days of creation. And there's 7 words in the first pasuk of Bereshit. So here we have the model of 6 days and Shabbat. But Rav Ginsburg, and this is actually a good time to do it, the book of the month, this is an entire book of Torah mathematics on the word Bereshit. It's called 913 because Bereshit is Gematria 913. It's basically an entire book on the mathematics of the word Bereshit and the first pasuk in the Torah. One of the things that the Rav reveals in here is that the Gematria of the first pasuk in the Torah, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, is 2,701. So you might ask, so what does that mean? So it turns out that 2,701 is the triangle of 73. 73 is Chachma. Meaning, if you count 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, all the way up to 73 equals 2,701. So now we understand the Targum Yerushalmi. When it says, B'chachma, I'm giving over the secret of 2,701. So just to finish the thought, so now we can understand the Targum Yerushalmi, which says, with wisdom God created the heavens and the earth, because the first pasuk is the triangle of Chachma. And that is the simple understanding of what we say every morning, Kulam b'chachma asita. You did everything, you made everything in wisdom. Okay, so that's the fill-in. But I saved the dedication until the Rav came here. Today is the 32nd yurtzeit of Sarah Sandler's father. Sarah Sandler, many people know, lives in Tzfat. And her father is Anshel Yoshua ben Shmuel and Kraina. And she said it, for her, it's very significant that it's the 32nd yurtzeit, because she described her father, Alav Shalom, as just having the biggest heart in the world. And of course, 32 is Gematria Lev. And obviously, his yurtzeit is the same every year, but this year being the 32nd year, following Bereshit, where we end the Torah with a Lamed and we begin the Torah with a Bet, so that's Lev. So that's the heart of the matter. So this year, Sarah, I'm sure you're watching. Your father should have an Aliyah to Neshama.
Amen. That's the name. Good afternoon to everyone. Good evening. Good morning in America. This evening we're going to continue talking about emet, truth, the topic that we've discussed the last two times. The last two times we discussed different philosophical theories about the truth, and as always try to parallel the ideas to some model, some basic model in Torah, Kabbalah, and Chassidut. This time we'll devote ourselves more to Torah per se, about truth. We mentioned, I believe, in the first class that there are three levels of truth that are spoken of in the Torah. One is called Svat Emet. Literally it means the lip of truth, but it means the periphery of truth. It's that which touches upon truth, the borderline of truth. It's called Svat Emet. It's already true, but it's not all the way into the essence, to the inner essence of truth. Then there is truth itself, emet, which is more than simply the svat emet, the periphery of truth. And then there's an expression which is a very enigmatic expression, emet la'amito, true truth, implying that simply truth is not absolute truth. There's something further in, or further above, which is called emet la'amito. Truth to His truth. His truth refers to the truth of Hashem, God's truth. It means aligning and totally identifying our truth with His truth. Emet la'amito. Now these three levels of truth actually correspond to the three letters of the word truth. Because truth, emet in Hebrew, has three letters. From above down, the Aleph, the first letter of emet, is the emet la'amito, the absolute true truth, or true to His truth. The mem, the middle letter, is simply truth, to be true, a true individual, a true character. I'll try to explain more what that means. And the final letter of emet, which is the taf, is the svat emet, the lip of truth, or the periphery of truth. The three letters of the word emet are also very significant because the first letter is Aleph, the first letter of the Aleph Bet, and the last letter is Tav, the final letter of the Aleph Bet, and the Mem is approximately in the middle. But we find in the Talmud Yerushalmi that it says explicitly, and also in the Zohar, in the Tikkunei Zohar, that the three letters of emet are beginning, middle, and end. Not just of the Aleph Bet, but in essence, the concept of truth. The reality of truth is a unification from beginning to end. One of the verses that Rashi quotes at the beginning of the Torah, in the first verse, Bereshit, in the beginning that we just heard, it has to do with Chokhmah, with wisdom. So he brings a verse, Magid Mereshit Acharit, that God brings from beginning to end. There's a flow, or a unification from beginning to end, Mereshit Acharit Magid. That concept also refers to truth. Truth being these three letters, the first and the middle and the last letter of the alphabet, means that it's a power or a force to bring things from beginning to end, meaning to be able to consummate one's abilities and one's inspirations. Magid Mereshit Acharit. Right. Since the letter Mem is not exactly the middle letter of the alphabet, there are many different explanations that maybe in the end of the class, if we have time, will show different explanations that are given by the great sages why the mem is considered to be the middle letter of the alphabet. Even though it's the 13th, there are 22 letters in the alphabet, and the mem is the 13th. Since 22 is an even number, so there is no exact middle. If it would be an odd number, there would be a middle letter. But if it's an even number, so there are two letters in the middle. And the two letters in the middle are the kaf and the lamed, the 11th and the 12th letter. The mem is the next letter, is the 13th letter. So if it would be that emes would be the first and the 11th and the last, or the first and the 12th and the last, that would seem to make more sense. But for some reason that we'll try to explain, it's taken that the first and the 13th and the 22nd are the beginning and the middle and the end of the alphabet. Since it's a force that brings things from beginning to end, there's something eternal, netzach, about emet. Anything which is true does not deceive. One of the meanings of this deception, to deceive, means that it stops in the middle. It doesn't complete, it doesn't consummate itself. Emet is something which is always consummate from beginning to end. Meaning that in essence, it's eternal. All right. So now we'll go back to the thought that there are three levels of truth. The absolute truth, emet lamito, and truth itself, and the periphery, sfat emet. We'll begin with the lowest level, which is sfat emet. Since the word that appears in the verse is sfat, which means a lip, so it could be that we mentioned this before, it means that a person speaks truth. If the lip is language, is communication, the spoken word. So what does it mean, sfat emet? It means, we're going to explain now that sfat emet means that I'm true to my word. First we'll say in general what we're now about to explain. The three levels of truth are that I am true to my word, that's the sfat emet, or above that I am true to myself, that's emet itself, or the ultimate level of truth is that I am true to God. And as we'll see, each of these three levels of being true to something also divide into two. The easiest to understand is being true to my word. If I say that I'm true to my word, which is sfat emet, it either means that I always speak truth, I never deceive, I never lie. The very first teaching of the alphabet itself, according to Rabbi Akiva, in a medrash which is called the Letters of Rabbi Akiva, is that the word Aleph, which is spelled as a full spelling of the letter Aleph, Aleph Lamed Pei, is an acronym for Emet Lamed Picha, teach your mouth truth. So that's the beginning of everything. The Shlach HaKadosh, one of the great sages a few hundred years ago, there are many descendants of him now, the Shlach. So he says that the first thing that a parent should make a great effort to educate his children is simply to speak truth. That if the child is taught to speak truth, then his whole life he'll be a good person. He'll never be able to deceive anybody about what he did, whether it's his parents or his friends, or in the future when he grows up, anyone, because it's become a part of him, of his behavior, to only speak truth. Well, that's the very first hora'ah teaching of Rabbi Akiva, Emet Lamed Picha, teach your mouth truth. One of the great Hasidic masters, his name is Reb Pinchas of Koretz, a Talmud, a great Talmud, disciple of the Baal Shem Tov. So his attribute that he worked on his whole life was truth. And he said that he toiled, yagati means to toil, he toiled very, very hard for 21 years to integrate and to identify, to become one with the attribute of truth. 21 years are 3 shmitot, 3 cycles of 7 years. So he said that 7 years, one full cycle of years, one shmitah, he had to work hard just ladat mahi emet, to know what is truth. What is truth? Meaning that it's very non-obvious, non-evident what truth even means for a person to be true. So he had to work 7 years just to know, to identify what is truth. As soon as he identified what is truth after 7 years, he had to work and toil another 7 years, ligaresh et ha-sheker, to divorce and throw out deceit, lie. The person is full of lies, inner lies. Until he knows what truth is, he won't even recognize or be conscious, be aware of all of the lies in his personality. How much he is lying, whether it's to someone else or to himself or to God. So it took another 7 years, ligaresh et ha-sheker, to divorce, to throw away all of the lies in his personality. And then it took another 7 years, an additional shmita, to fully lachnis bo or lachdir bo et ha-emet, lalev, to permeate and have the truth penetrate into his heart and become one with him. Vayu lebasar echad le'etzem echad, just like a marriage of a groom and bride, that to become one with the truth. When you become one with something, you also give birth to progeny from that unity with the truth. So once more, this story is a very important teaching. What is the significance of the relation of 21 to truth? We probably mentioned that the word truth is 21 squared. Emet is 441. We talked about this. That is 21 squared. 21 is Hashem's name. Ekia, I shall be. And when that name is first revealed to Moses at the burning bush, so God says, Ekia Asher Ekia, I shall be that which I shall be. And those two names, Ekia, when multiplied together, which is simply a square of Ekia, 21 on 21, it becomes Emet. So that definitely is the reason that Reb Pinchas of Koretz had to work 21 years to become one with truth, dividing the 21 into the 3 periods of 7. So all of this was to explain that the first meaning of being true to one's word is simply speaking truth, always speaking truth. Rabbi Pinchas of Koretz, he also integrated and became one with the higher levels of truth. But now we're beginning to explain the 3 levels from the bottom. It said that each level has 2 dimensions to it. So one thing is speaking truth. What else is being true to one's word? Even when I say the phrase in English, to be true to one's word, it doesn't mean exactly to speak truth. What does it mean? To be true to one's word. It means that whatever I say or said, if I implied in any way that I'm going to do something or behave in a certain manner, I have to fulfill it. I have to keep my word. To being true to one's word means to keep your word. that if you promised something, you have to keep the promise. How do we know that keeping our promise is called truth? It's a very important Rashi in the beginning of Parashat Ve'ero. Rashi says to Moshe Rabbeinu before the Exodus, he says that Ushmi Havayado Nodati Lahem, I have as of yet not made my name, my essential name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, known to the people, but the name Yud Kei Vav Kei was known. What does it mean? I have not made my name known. I have not yet revealed, says Rashi, I have not yet revealed myself with my attribute of truth. For I have promised, and I have not yet fulfilled. I promised the fathers to redeem the children, and I have not yet fulfilled my word, fulfilled my promise. So Rashi says that means that I have not yet revealed my attribute of truth, and the essence of my name Havaya is the attribute of truth, and until I fulfill my promise, the truth is not revealed. So just at this first level of Sfat Emet, the lip of truth, there are the two dimensions. Speak truth, just speak truth. If we want to differentiate, we can say that speaking truth in particular refers to the past. To say, if I say something, I have to say what was or what is. And to fulfill truth means that if I made a promise or even implied a promise, without actually saying that it's a promise, just implied something that I'm going to do, it says that a tzaddik, even if he implies in his heart something that he's going to do, that he agrees upon in his heart that he's going to give a certain amount of charity. So dover emet bilvavo, he speaks truth in his heart. That's something we say every morning in our prayers. What does it mean to speak truth in your heart? That if in your heart you said that you're going to give such amount of a charity, you have to fulfill it. That means speaking truth. So both of those levels are still Sfat Emet, the lip of truth, or the periphery of truth. Above that is being true to oneself. And being true to oneself, when being true to one's word, is the taf of truth, the third level of truth, the third letter of truth, the final letter of the alphabet. To be true to oneself is the middle. The middle level is the middle letter of the alphabet, which according to Chazal is the mem, the middle letter of truth. To be true to oneself also has two meanings to it, two dimensions to it. One dimension is no false pretense about who you are. Do not deceive yourself in relation to yourself. Is actually sometimes taken to be the one statement that is the all-inclusive teaching of Tanya, of the classic text of Chassidut. Al tiramai. Do not deceive yourself about yourself. Do not think that you're a tzaddik, that you're a consummate righteous soul, when alevai benani, would it only be that I would be an intermediate soul. Intermediate doesn't mean mediocre. Intermediate means a person that guards well all of his thoughts and his words and his actions are all according to the Torah. But people have the tendency to deceive themselves about themselves. Every night, we're supposed to make a cheshbon nefesh, an account of everything that we did that day in order to correct ourselves, to do tshuva. But the most important cheshbon nefesh in Chassidut is aliba de nafshe, once more assessing yourself not just assessing your deeds. Where am I holding? This we read about in this Parashah Breshit that we read yesterday in the Torah. After the primordial sin, Hashem, God comes and says to Adam, Ayek, where are you? Where are you holding? Where is your being right now? The Alter Rebbe made a very, very important teaching just out of that saying, Ayeka, that everyone has to be able to say to himself also, Ayeka, where are you? The word truth, emet, is 21 squared, we said, it's 441. If we calculate the word in what's called ordinal numbering, that every letter is calculated from 1 to 22, so actually this was what we said about the beginning and the middle and the end of the alphabet, that the aleph is 1, and the mem is 13, and the taf is 22. So what does that equal together? It equals also a square number. It equals 36. It's 6 squared. What is 21? 441 is 21 squared. What is 21? 21 itself is 6 triangular. All numbers from 1 to 6, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 equals 21. So the triangle of 6 squared is 441. But just 6 itself squared is 36, which is the ordinal value of emet. What word in normal numbering equals 36? Ayeka. Be true to yourself. Know where are you? Ayeka. It's like the word echa, the first word of Lamentations. Because very often if a person makes a true cheshbon nefesh, where I'm holding now, so he can start saying Lamentations. But Hashem doesn't want us to remain with Lamentations. He wants us to be happy. But still, He wants us to not to deceive ourselves about ourselves. That's number one. That's like always speaking the truth. It's not to present a false pretense about who you are, whether it's to another person, whether it's to yourself. And so if you think that you're presenting your self-image to God, which is a false self-image. So that's definitely a lie. So this is at the level of speaking, of being true to one's word. This is like the first level, simply speaking the truth. So when I say being true to oneself, also to present oneself, whether it's to the other person or to myself or to God, as I truly am. Like a person comes to a Rebbe, to a great tzaddik. He has to come as he really is, not with any false pretense. Otherwise, it's not going to work. He's not going to have any to'elet, any advantage from that yichidut with the Rebbe. Thus he comes, it says he comes, he has clothes, but he comes spiritually naked, to take off all of the images, and just to present himself as he is. That's the way I have to appear before God and also before myself. And to a certain extent, also even before people. Because we're not to deceive people about who I am. What's the inner level of being true to oneself? Which is like keeping one's promise, at the level of being true to one's word. The true level is the dedication and self-sacrifice that one has continuously to fulfill his mission in life. But to fulfill my mission in life, I have to know what my mission in life is, which is not a simple thing at all. But whether I really know exactly what my mission is, or whether I do not know what my mission is, definitely God has given me certain talents and abilities, and He wants me to utilize them to the fullest. Wants me to realize my potential. Being true to myself like fulfilling promises that we said before, everyone has an innate promise to himself. And that innate promise to myself is to fulfill all of the potential that God has given me. Which means to fulfill my mission in life. Everyone has a mission in life. So these are the two dimensions of being true to oneself. Not to present any false pretense about oneself, and to be devoted and dedicated to realize my God-given potential. What does it mean to be true to God? That's the Aleph of Emet. The Emet La'amito, the truth for the sake of His truth. To be true to His truth. God also presents Himself in a certain way to us. How does He present Himself? He's given us a Torah. The Torah has the 613 commandments to it. The Torah and God are one. The Torah is God's self-representation to us. If I keep the mitzvot of the Torah, I live by the Torah, I'm living by the will of God. The highest level of Emet in the Sfirot, in Kabbalah, is the Keter, the crown. The crown has two dimensions to it. The outer dimension is will, and the inner dimension is ta'anu, pleasure. In the terminology of Kabbalah, they're referred to as two different figures, or personae. The outer level is called Arich Anpin, the long countenance, or the infinite countenance. And the inner level is called Atik Yomin, which is the Ancient of Days. As far the long or infinite countenance is divine will, and the Ancient of Days, which precedes it, is divine serenity or pleasure. To be true to God's will is to keep the Torah. I am being true to the way God wants me to represent Him in the world. God wants me to be a little image of God. But in order to be an image of God, I have my 248 limbs and 365 blood vessels, gidim, and they correspond to the 248 positive commandments and the prohibitions, the 365 prohibitions of the Torah. So in order to represent myself as a representation, a little image of God, I have to be true to His will, which is to the mitzvot of the Torah. Is there an inner dimension to God? Does God promise something to Himself that He also wants me to fulfill His promise to Himself, which is beyond simply keeping the mitzvot of the Torah? Yes, God created the world, as we're taught in the Tanya, in order to make the world a dwelling place for Him below, on the very lowest realms of reality. This is the lowest world. And He wants to dwell here below. So obviously the means is to keep the mitzvot, but the intention of fulfilling God's promise, if God created the world for a certain reason that has not yet been fulfilled, that's His mission. Just like I have my mission, God has His mission. And His mission is to dwell below, but He wants me to help Him fulfill his mission. If I have that in mind, and I'm always conscious of fulfilling God's mission, that's being true to the inner dimension of God. So one way of understanding that is once more to always have in mind that I'm here to make this world a dwelling place for God. Can we say it in a different way? Yes, there's another expression, a very important expression. That everything that I do should be for the sake of sanctifying God's name. L'kadesh Shem Shamayim. The Rambam even says that if a Jew lives properly according to the Torah, he's doing two things at the same time. He's keeping Hashem's will. But if he's a good person, and if he fulfills especially the commandment of loving God, which one of the interpretations of Yahavta, to love God, means make God become loved by other people that see you as a good example, that's already something else. That's not just keeping the mitzvot. That's called that everything that you do in your life is a sanctification of God's name on earth. And that sanctification of God's name on earth that a Jew is capable of performing every moment of his life is fulfilling God's promise to himself. So this was a whole now topic by itself, a very important and beautiful model, that we have three levels of truth, the periphery of truth, Sfat Emet, and truth to God, or absolute truth, Emet Lamito. And it all pertains to our service, and it all has to do with that toil that Rabbeinu Zechariah toiled for 21 years to become one with truth. And each of these levels has two dimensions to it. To be true to one's word, to be true to one's self, and to be true to God. Right, now we're going to turn to another very beautiful topic. We're going to learn a section from the Gemara, from the Talmud, Masechet Ta'anit, and Agadah. There were three souls that had the power to make the sun stand still throughout history. Everybody knows about one of them, Joshua. It said, Shemesh b'givon dom v'yareach be'emek ayalon, that in the midst of the war against the Canaanite people, that God commanded us to conquer and to inherit the land of Canaan, which became the land of Israel. So the greatest miracle that happened in the wars of Joshua was having the sun stand still in order to complete the battle, to complete the victory. But the sages teach us that there were another two great souls that the sun stood still for. One is Moses himself, Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the mentor of Joshua. So if the disciple can make the sun stand still, so most likely the teacher can also make the sun stand still. But we have to learn that in the Torah where it says, because it's not explicit in the Torah. But the most amazing thing is that there was an individual, a Jew, at the end of the period of the Second Temple, in the generation that the Second Temple was destroyed, and just before the destruction of the Second Temple, that he also was able to make the sun stand still. So we're talking about truth. How are we now coming to this amazing ability of making the sun stand still. So what we're going to see is that a person that is one with truth, this attribute of truth, itself is the power to make the sun stand still. So this is a chidush, a great innovation by itself. I mean that the sign also, if a person wants to know if he's really become one with truth, if he's a true soul at all of those levels that we just explained now, so the sign is, can he make the sun stand still? So who is that third amazing soul, the only one like Moses and Joshua that made the sun stand still? His name is Nakdimon Ben Gurion. His family name Ben Gurion, we know somebody else had the same family name. But he took it from this person. His name is Nakdimon Ben Gurion. Now we're going to read the story in the Gemara of how they made the sun stand still, what actually happened, what transpired. But before we read, we'll make it also a very beautiful gematria, maybe two, in order to strengthen the illusion, the hint that the truth, what we're talking about, truth, is the power to make the sun stand still. And since we have three souls that were able to do this, they themselves must be the three levels of truth, the three letters of truth, the Aleph and the Mem and the Tav of the truth. So let's calculate their names. The way the Gemara says is Moshe, Yehoshua, Nakdimon, Ben Gurion. Moshe equals 345. Yehoshua equals 391. Nakdimon Ben Gurion equals 587. So now let's have someone add them together. Add them together and divide by 3. You can also guess. Altogether, they equal 1,323, 1323. When divided by 3 is 441. When these three souls that have this astounding power to make the sun stand still, they are three levels of truth. That's their tzad ha-shaveh, their average value. Another amazing gematria to see that the truth has to do with this ability to make the sun stand still. In the book of Joshua, when we're told of the story of Joshua being able to make the sun stand still, so it says, Halo hiktuvah sefer hayashar, that's the phrase. Behold, it is written on the straight book, the book of the straight of the fathers, the righteous. I mean, it's written in the Torah, but the phrase is, Halo hiktuvah al sefer hayashar. Halo is without a vav, take out the vav. Now, just the first word itself, Halo means either behold, or it means better to translate it verily. Verily, so is written on the book of the straight. What does this phrase have to, besides the fact that it's saying that this ability to to make the sun stand still is written in the Torah. It's referred to as the book of the straight, but obviously it must have some more significance why this phrase appears in this context of Joshua making the sun stand still. The first word itself, halo, also equals 36, as we said before, is the value of truth in ordinal numbering. But how much is the value of the whole phrase? Halo, 36, he, 16, Tuvah, 433, Al, 100, Sefer, 340, Hayashar is 515. Everybody has to come with a calculator. Jews like adding numbers together. It's a good Jewish practice. So what did you get? You got 1,440. Whether you know it or not, that's what you got. What does this number have to do with Emet? It's 10 times 144. 144 is also a square number. It's 12 squared. It's also 441 backwards. But what is 1440? This also equals the word Emet. How so? Because the aleph of a word, especially when it's the first letter of a word, is often taken to be 1,000, because aleph is elef. So when the aleph of emet is taken to equal 1,000, so emet equals 1,440, which is the full value of this phrase, halo hi ktuvah sefer hayashar. Meaning that a very clear implication that this power that Joshua had to make the sun stand still is coming from his affinity, his closeness and identity with truth, that he's a true soul. He's true to his word. When was Joshua true to his word? The story of the Givonim. It was the people that betrayed the Jewish people, but they promised. And even though the promise was a betrayal, was a lie, but he kept the vow, he kept his word. He's true to himself means that he knows who he is, and he knows what his mission is, and he's true to God that he keeps the Torah and the mitzvot, and he also, whatever he does it to sanctify God's name, not for his own glory. Famous expression of Rabbi Nachman, the person always has to diminish his own honor and make great the honor of God in everything that he does. That's just like saying that everything that I do, I have to have in mind that it's in order to sanctify God's name, which is to fill God's promise to himself. Right, so Joshua is a true soul. Even according to Kabbalah, one of the meanings of truth, and one of the positions in the Sfirot of truth is Yesod. Joshua is Yesod, the Sfirah of Yesod. He's a descendant of Joseph, of Yosef, who is Yesod, the inner property of which is truth. So Joshua is a very true soul, and because of that, he is able to have the sun stand still. Where does it say explicitly in Kabbalah that Emet equals 1,440? In the classic text of Kabbalah, not just 441. It says so in the writings of the Arizal that the beginning of the appearance of truth, now we'll speak in terminology of Kabbalah, truth also has a beginning and a middle and an end, just like the three letters of truth. The beginning of the revelation of truth is called Yesod Abba. The foundation within wisdom. I'm not now going to explain this too much. Then that Yesod Abba descends, is extended, and reveals itself in the Partzuf, in the persona which is called Ze'er Anpin, which is the Sfirah of Tiferet in the heart, mercy, compassion in the heart. So first Emet appears as wisdom. Then it appears as compassion in the heart. And then finally it appears truth in the inner property of Malchut, of kingdom, which is Shiflut. Shiflut is lowliness, which is being to assess oneself in truth, not to deceive oneself about oneself. That's called Shiflut. Who was the great tzaddik that identified truth with Shiflut? David, but also the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, Rebbe Vitebsk, the Vitebsk that came here that was one with the land of Israel, which is called the land of truth. So what was his signature? How did he sign his name? HaShofo Be'emes. Unifying truth with Shiflut. Name that also equals 72. It's called the Achorayim. The generation, to generate something from beginning to end. What does that mean in Kabbalah? It means taking the first letter and then adding the second letter, then adding the third letter, and then adding the fourth letter. So if I do that on God's essential name, once more Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's a Yud which is 10, and then the second, it's 4 stages of generation. The first stage is simply the Yud by itself, which is 10. The second stage is the Yud and the He, which is 15. So 10 and 15 is already 25. The third stage is the Yud and the He and the Vav, which is 21. So it's already 46. And the final stage is the whole four letters of the name, Yud Kei Vav, which is 26, and 46 and 26 is once more 72. So they're two different things altogether. Filling the name in with the letter Yud gives a name by itself which equals 72, and generating the four letters of the name also gives the same number of 72. But the first secret is in wisdom, the filling of the name. But the generation of the name is in Malchut, so is explained in Kabbalah. And Malchut also has its 10 sefirot, so it's 10 times 72 equals 720. So what happens when I take the 720 from wisdom and add it, meaning unite it, with the 720 in Malchut, in lowliness? So what do I get? I get 1,440, which is Emet. This is the origin in Kabbalah. And he explains it, 1,440. The 1,000 is simply the letter Aleph. And the 440 are the two letters Mem and Tav of Emet. This is once more the value of the phrase that's used to refer to this, the miracle of Joshua having the sun stand still. Halo hiktuva Sefer Yashar. Obviously, Sefer Yashar is the Torah, and the Torah is Emet. If we already have mentioned this number 720, and 2 times 720 is 1,440. What else? Does somebody know anything else about 720? What's special about 720? Somebody should know. What's 720? Just in pure number theory, what is 720? 720 is 6 factorial. Before we talked about the triangle of 6. Triangle of 6 means adding all numbers 1 to 6, we got 21. And 21 squared was truth, emet. But what happens if I multiply all the numbers 1 to 6? That's called factorial 6. So what do I get? I get 720. Don't believe me, work it out. 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 is 720. Where does that appear in the Torah? Factor, that's the number of permutations of the first word of the Torah. This number is the basis of the book called Tikkunei HaZohar. Tikkunei HaZohar is the meditation on all of the permutations of the first word of the Torah, Breshit. And since the first word of the Torah has 6 different letters, different is very important. Since Breshit is 6 different letters, so there are 720 permutations of Breshit. So meaning that Emet is actually twice 6, just like Emet is the product of 2 6 triangles. So is Emet, this form of Emet, it's the sum of 2 6 factorial. What else in the Torah has to do with 720? The soul is most identified with Emet. There are many, several souls. Jacob is identified with Emet. Iten Emet Yaakov. Even more so Moshe. Moses is the inner soul of Jacob, it says. Moshe Emet v'Torah to Emet. Moses is true and his Torah is true. So once more, if the power to make the sun stand still is the power of Joshua, that he's the disciple of Moses, certainly Moses, the essence of truth, also has that power, and even more so. Who is Moses married to? What's Moses' wife's name? Tzipporah. Moses is 345. How much is Tzipporah? Now they're getting married right now. And we are now giving over a vort at their Kabbalah Sponim. Moses and Tzipporah, Moshe and Tzipporah are now getting married. So what is the vort that we have to say at their Kabbalat Panim? I have to say that they equal together 345 and 375. They equal 720. The simple word that is 72 is chesed. So 10 times 72 is consummate, loving kindness. What happened to this marriage of Moses and Zipporah? At a certain point, when the Torah was given, God told Moses to separate physically from Zipporah. But then he gave us 630 commandments, which equals Moshe Rabbeinu, 613. And every mitzvah begins with the two concealed letters of mitzvah, Mem Tzadik, which are Yud K in Atbash, the mirror image of the Aleph Bet. And one of the secrets of those first two letters of mitzvah, the commandment, Mem Tzadik, are the initial letters of Moshe and Zipporah. But that's at the hidden, the concealed level. Every time we do a mitzvah, tomorrow morning when you put on tefillin, so think that this is a yichud, a unification, a zivug of Moshe and Zipporah at the hidden level. The revealed level is called Yichud Kudsha B'Yichud Shchinte, which is the Vav and the Hey of the word mitzvah. So every mitzvah that we do, we're unifying Moses and Zipporah with 720, but this number, Emet, is 2 times this value. There's a verse that reads, Chacham lev yikach mitzvot. He who is wise of heart takes commandments. The word mitzvot is in the plural, and there's a principle of Chazal that a word that appears simply in the plural means 2. Miut Rabim Shtayim. So comes the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, and he says that if a person has a wise heart, every mitzvah that he does it simultaneously in 2 dimensions. One is the outer dimension of the deed, and the other is the inner dimension of the kavanah. That's why every mitzvah that we do, we're doing 2 mitzvot. This is also represented in the phrase that we say in the blessing before a mitzvah, Asher kitshanu b'mitzvot. We do 1 mitzvah, and we bless Hashem that you have sanctified us in your mitzvot, in your 2 mitzvot. Also implying that every single mitzvah that we do is 2-fold, 2 dimensions. What are the 2 dimensions? In deed and in intention, inner intention. At each dimension, there is a unity of Moshe and Zipporah, which is the Mem and the Tzadik of mitzvah. And so 2 times 720, once more is Emet. This was all just this Gematria of 1,440 being Emet, truth. Now we'll read in short, and I see that we're not going to have time to do this as much as I wanted, so we'll probably continue the next time. Just now going to read the story of Nakdimun. It's a very amazing story. We're going to have to meditate upon more. This I'm now reading from Masechet Ta'anit, Daf Yutet Amud Bet, and it goes on to Daf Kaf Amud Aleph, and it begins, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages have taught, Pam Achat Alu Kol Yisrael L'Regel Yerushalayim. One time, all of Israel came to celebrate one of the 3 festivals in Jerusalem. V'lo haya lehem mayim. They didn't have water. There was not sufficient supply of water for the whole Jewish people that came to Jerusalem to drink. Yishtot halach Nakdimon ben Gurion. Now, Nakdimon ben Gurion must be a great tzaddik, because we're going to see that he made the sun stand still. What was he? Was he a great Talmid Chacham? Was he a rabbi? What was he? He wasn't a rabbi at all. Was he a simple Jew? He wasn't exactly a simple Jew. He was a multi-billionaire. That's his Indian, money. In a different place in the Gemara, in Masechet Gittin, but I say this, somebody's laughing already, because, meaning that with money, enough money, you can also make the sun stand still. You just have to have enough money and know how to use the money properly. In another place in the Gemara, it says that in the generation, in the time of the destruction of Second Temple, there were 3 multi-billionaires. And the first of which is our Nakdimon Ben Gurion. He's number 1. The second of which is called Ben Kalba Savua, the father-in-law of Rabbi Akiva. The third of which is called Ben Tzitzis HaKeses. Right. So again, we're not going to have no time. This is all a topic by itself. In addition to these 3 multi-billionaires, there was also a multi-billionaireess, Marto Bas Baitus. The Gemara explains at length what happened to her in the destruction, during the destruction of the Second Temple. These 3 very, very rich people wanted to save Jerusalem, which was in siege at the end. And they had the ability with their wealth to provide for all the hundreds of thousands of souls in Jerusalem for 21 years. So the Gemara teaches us. One of them supplied all of the wheat and barley. This is the order that the Gemara says. So most likely that was Nakdimon, the first one that is mentioned. The second supplied all of the oil, the olive oil that's necessary, and all of the salt that is necessary, and other such commodities. And the third of which supplied all of the wood, which means the fuel. Nowadays it's the fuel which is necessary for 21 years. But unfortunately, there was a whole band of militants that they wanted to make war with the Romans. And in order to, and they were Jews, of course, but they wanted to go to war, and the sages saw that it would not succeed. Not because the sages are absolutely non-militant, because they saw in the Ruach HaKodesh that it will not succeed. But the militants were very stubborn, and they wanted to force the people into hunger in order that they should have to fight. So what did they do? They burnt all of the warehouses of these 3 rich people that were able to supply the populace, to sustain the populace for 21 years. The fact that the Gemara says that they were able to sustain the populace for 21 years is obviously it's not a non-significant number. Because 21 is our number. That's the root of truth. It's the number of years that Pinchas Koretzer had to work on in order to identify himself with truth. All right, so there were 4 rich people, 3 men and 1 woman. They must themselves correspond to Yud Kei Vav Kei. The first of which is Nakdimon Ben Gurion, the one that is able to make the sun set. Okay, that's just background information. So there was no water. One time, this was years before, several years obviously before the destruction, that the people came to pilgrimage, and there was no water to drink. So there was a certain hegemon, a certain high official of Rome that was there in Jerusalem, was responsible for Jerusalem, and he had waters. What did he have? He had 12 fountains of water. which was enough to supply the whole people for 1 week, for the week of the festival of the holiday. I'll say it from outside in order to make it shorter, the time short. Naktimon comes, our rich man Naktimon comes to this official, and he says that give me all the water that you have, and either I'll give you back the water, the 12 fountains of water, which was a tremendous amount of water, or if I don't give you back the water by a certain date, I will have to give you 12 kikar of kesef, which is a tremendous amount of, say, millions, billions of dollars worth of silver. A certain tremendous amount. So the Roman official agreed. He gave the water. The people had water to drink. The festival passed. The date that he had to pay back was coming soon. Sooner, and so there was a drought. There was no water. A total drought. Comes the very day, the last day of the agreement. The official sends a message to Naktimon. He says, I want the money. I already want the money. There's no water. To pay back in water means that there has to be rain. If there's rain, then the fountains are filled with water. But if there's no rain, then you owe me the money. So that morning, the last day, you owe me the money. What did he answer? He wrote back a message, Naktimon. What's up? Asked him back, he said, it's just morning. There's still time. I have until evening. Came the afternoon, no water, no rain. You either have to pay me water or money. So I want the money because there's no rain. Comes the late afternoon, nothing, no water. Once more he sends him either water or money, one of the two. Every time he sends him back, there's still time. The day isn't over yet. So when it's just approaching evening, the Roman official, the Goy, he goes into the Beis HaMerchot, into the bath house. Happy, because he knows that he's not going to get his money. At the same time that he enters the bathhouse, the Beis HaMerchot, so Naktimon goes into the Beis HaMikdash, into the temple. The temple is still standing, the second temple. This is a beautiful example. Just before the destruction, sometimes the greatest miracle will happen. The power of the temple and praying in the temple is still there. It's just like it says, at the very moment of destruction, the two cherubim would face one another in love. The temple was because we didn't do Hashem's will, and the two cherubim were back to back. But at the very moment of the destruction, it says they faced one another. This is also an example that just before the destruction, this tremendous, astounding miracle that hadn't happened for thousands of years since Joshua happened once more. So once more, he goes into the Goy goes into the Beis HaMerchot, and Naktimon goes into the Beis HaMikdash, and he says to Hashem, you know that my commitment was only for your sake. I did it for you. I didn't do it for myself. Once more, this is emet la'amito. I did it for you, not for me. So as soon as he says, and he said those words with truth, he prayed with truth. Everything here is truth. As soon as he said that, the clouds appeared in the sky, and it started to rain. It started to rain and started to pour. But according to the clock, to the watch, it was already night. When the official came out of the bath, so he came into a flood of rain. And all of his fountains, all of his wells, everything was full of water. So he comes out of the bathhouse, and Naktimon comes out of the temple, and they meet one another. And the Roman says to Naktimon, says, I know that God didn't turn over the world he did it for your sake. But I still have a claim. My claim is that the water belongs to me, it doesn't belong to you. Because the water fell after sunset. What does Naktimon do? The water is in my time, not in your time. So what did you? He re-entered the temple, and once more he prayed to Hashem. He said, show to the world, to the whole world, that you have lovers. Meaning that there are people that love you and that you love a certain people, which is the Jewish people. And when he prayed that, those words in the temple, so the sky was full of clouds, because it was raining. At that moment, the clouds disappeared, the sky became clear and pure, and the sun shined. This was already at night. The sun, meaning that whole period of time that it was raining, the sun was standing still. Now the expression of the Gemara is that the sun pierced through the heavens. That's actually the way it's explained his name. So then there's nothing more for that Roman official to say. God made a miracle that the sun came out at night, that it's still day, it's still daytime, meaning the sun was standing still. This happened just before the destruction of the Second Temple, this miracle. So now we have to explain, again, this is simply a rich Jew who is doing things to sanctify, he's using his money and his power, his political power, to sanctify God's name. That's the ultimate truth. There's a lot more to talk about these three souls, and we still have to explain more in depth what is the relationship between truth and making the sun stand still. So that we'll have to do next time, B'ez Hashem. So it should have a happy Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, and Yaakov Holach Darka. After the holidays, we say that Jacob went to his way. We should all go on the way of fulfilling our mission in life and sanctifying Hashem's name in this world.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Again, this Shira was dedicated to Anshel Yeshua ben Shmuel, 32nd yahrzeit of his passing. The next class is the 4th of November, the first Sunday of November, Chaf Vav Cheshvan, same time, same place. And just reminding the book of the month, for those who are here, it's in the back. And there's a new book, we didn't mention this before, called Ba'olei Tzadikim, from Rav Ginsburg on Binyan Habayit HaYehudi, on different words from different Hasidic masters, with Rav Ginsburg's Perush on how to build a beautiful Jewish house. Thank you all for coming.
In a few minutes, Ma'ariv.
And in a few minutes, we'll have Ma'ariv.